So next up, Paul is a video content creator, speaker, writer, radio host, and podcaster. He is the founder and creator of the award-winning video series Fake in Space, which has been viewed more than 2 million times on YouTube and consists of more than 30 videos detailing the forensic analysis of the images and information we have been given by the world's space agencies. His most recent productions focus on the Apollo space program, and thanks to his collaborative work with moon landing researcher Scott Henderson. Season 3 of Fake in Space is currently in production, and in addition to his more than 300 video creations, Paul hosts Paul on the Plane Live, a 2-hour weekly show on Truth Frequency Radio, and his podcast Lone Life with Paul on the Plane and Page is featured weekly on paulontheplane.com, SoundCloud, and iTunes. Now with Roxanne once per week on Tuesday night on our Wednesday morning show on TFR. Paul's entire body of work, talks and writings and research can be found on his website, paulontheplane.com, including the documentation and details of the experiments he's been involved with that relate to testing the Earth's curvature and motion. Paul also is a volunteer with the Independent Scientific Research Group, FECOR Inc., and is the creator of Flat Earth Music Television. That's a YouTube channel. Paul is married with 3 children, a businessman in Washington State. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us, Paul. Please put your hands together for the one and only Paul Lindbergh.
Hello everyone at the Globe Lie UK convention. It's President Donald Trump. So I've been knowing about Flat Earth for a long time, and it's about time we disclose it, right? We're going to disclose it, and it's going to be tremendous. And I take credit for making the Earth flat again, okay? If it wasn't for Donald Trump, the Earth would still be a spinning ball. You got some tremendous speakers here at the Globe Lie convention, including the great Dave Murphy, Mark Sargent, Roxanne, and of course, Paul on the Plane. It's going to be a terrific, tremendous conference, and believe me, we're going to make the Earth flat again. Okay, it's going to be tremendous, big league, and fantastic, and I am the reason why we're going to make the Earth flat. Nobody knows more about Flat Earth than me.
I heard that Mark Sargent had a intro plan, and naturally I couldn't be outdone by that guy. So I called in a favor, and thank you, Mr. President, for greetings from America. I'm here from the state of Washington. Mark as well. Welcome. I'm on a journey. Words escape me right now. I don't know if it's the beginning, maybe it's near the end, maybe somewhere in between. But we are meeting at a time of transformation in this world, and a big radical change is going on in my life. The evidence is that we're all in this room right here, right now, at this moment in time. What you're going to see today, what I have planned to share, are highlights from a video series that I hesitantly began putting on YouTube in the summer of 2017. It has spanned about, in 3 seasons now, but these are the highlights. And this is what I wanted to share, because this is where my work or investigation or research into this subject has been focusing on. It will make sense why in a minute when I kind of get into my story. I think that when it comes to this subject, Earth from space, the reason that it is so personal for me is because when I started looking into this, first of all, this was my stumbling block. Okay, so real quickly, those of you that have heard my story, very simply, I blame my wife, first of all. She's not here to defend herself. But she came home one evening, we were having dinner, and she said, did you know that there are people that think the earth is flat? This was October 2016. And I'm not the type of guy that gives kind of a knee-jerk reaction, or, I didn't laugh. It was kind of it was shocking to me. And the first thing I thought of, this is one thing I do remember from that moment, the first thing I thought of was, how can anybody think that because of the pictures from space? That was my initial reaction. Anybody else have that initial reaction that you remember? Yeah, that's got to be, if not the first, one of the first things that you're going to think of. What about all the pictures from space? That's what I had to overcome to really start to entertain this thought. So, we chuckled or whatever, and I, wow, and we went on. We didn't have a long conversation about it that night. It was a few days later that planted seed, that seed that was planted in my mind started to germinate. And I started going online. And I kind of did what everybody did. Started looking at pictures of Earth from space. And I started noticing things like they all look different. All different colors, continents being different sizes and things like that. Did anybody come across this? It's probably one of the first things that you come across, right? Looking at pictures of Earth from space. The first thing I did was want to understand the vernacular that we're using. Well, what is a picture? Well, if you look at the definition of the picture, it is a design or representation made by various means, such as painting, drawing, or photography. A description so vivid or graphic as to suggest a mental image or give an accurate idea of something. Okay, it's a mental image. That's what this is. I think the images that we are given of the Earth are meant to just create that mental image in our mind, and continually being reinforced. So I started Googling. Very simply, this is the Google search for Earth from space. Anybody else done this? Right? Absolutely. Started noticing some very, very weird things. So I started asking people about that. And they said, don't worry, they're just composites. To which I said, well, that's a composite. Those are two real images. Anybody seen this thing? Flew around online a couple of years ago, right? That's a composite image. Two photographs combined into one. Does that make it real? Obviously not. There's the information about it. So what I said about doing was to start understanding the history behind these images from the Earth from space. So what I found was that NASA claims that, well, first of all, NASA doesn't even use the word photograph. Does anybody know that? They always use the word image, okay? And it's only until you look at the mainstream media then who takes, an image from NASA, they'll use the word photograph, okay? But NASA itself will not use the word photograph. They will say images, okay? This is the first photo from space. That's what we're told. October 24th, 1946. It's a black and white image, 65 miles above the Earth, and it was a video, it was a motion picture actually, camera aboard a V-2 rocket above White Sands, New Mexico. And the first thing that I thought of was, there, making sure it worked. There's no curvature. Okay, this is actually space, because they tell us that the boundary between space and Earth is about 62 miles or 100 kilometers, called the Kármán line. Okay, so even from that height, there was no curvature. This was the second. This was called Earthrise from August 23rd, 1966. This is claimed to be the first ever image of the entire Earth as seen from lunar orbit. There's a camera on a probe, we're told. Okay, this is this was a famous live Christmas Eve broadcast in 1968, December 24th, from Apollo 8. It's called the partial disc. Okay, this was a really big deal. It was a live broadcast. It was on Christmas Eve, and as we get into the analysis that I've kind of done from these images and the ones that are recent, this one, NASA does some callbacks to this one, which will, from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. So I just wanted to mention it. Okay, does anybody recognize this image? Yeah, that's what it looks like. This is the one that we were given. This is the iconic full disk of the Earth from 1972, Apollo 17. But if I kind of go back there, this is the original, right? There, that's the original. Okay, it's pretty blurry. This then is where, if you go and do the research and find out where this photo is online, or this image online, this is where it's stored on the NASA website, the Apollo Image Atlas and Archives, and it has all of the details behind it. Now this image, when you do an analysis with a program called Forensically, which we're going to go through quite a bit here, because we're starting to look at some of the more recent ones, even this one has the Photoshop signature on it. Okay, so they took the blurry image that was the original. This is the enhanced version that they gave us. They added in a stage of the rocket. They got that from the original as well. Photoshopped. And then this is the full color version. This is the one that graced the front of science books and textbooks for 40-something years. Okay? So I just found it very interesting that they got such a blurry image, and then they turned it into this, and this is what they were able to. This is what they showed everybody. This is what they wanted. This is what they wanted us to see. This is what they wanted us to remember. But if you look at the original, it's pretty blurry. So from this to that, pretty good technology. You know, the original image, but they really got it enhanced. Okay.
What about the original image? What's about the original image?
What's the point? Sorry.
You're saying the original image came from somewhere.
Yeah, this is what, in fact, all three astronauts aboard Apollo 17 have claimed to have taken this picture. All three of them. But I just found it interesting that...
The original image was poor quality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look at that. This is what the original image that we were given.
I think we were given one.
But...
Why produce a poor quality image if you're going to fool people?
Yeah, that's the point. Doesn't make any sense. All three of them have the Photoshop signature, even back from this time period. Because it has to be. Now, have you guys seen this clip?
In 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simon made this. And it had wide appeal too. For example, it ended up as the default background on the iPhone.
I didn't even know until I bought an iPhone and turned it on and kind of did a little happy dance.
Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
To us, the really cool thing was the data set. Up until that point, there was no realistic color map of the globe anywhere.
So the land layer here comes from
the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer aboard Terra.
And the tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it was a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then,
There was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
and then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
This was called the Blue Marble Data Set from 2002. And it's going to come up often when we start doing an analysis of the current images that we get. And so what the majority of this presentation then is going to focus on is that we have 3 satellites, mainly, 3 or 4 satellites, that are sending us images of the Earth at regular increments, regular bits of time. And we're going to find out that there's going to be a callback to this one. So it gets really interesting. So if you go to the NASA website and you look at Robert Simon, and you look at his bio, they do like a little Q&A thing. And I thought it was really interesting what his comment was. What is the coolest thing you've ever done as part of your job at Goddard? The last time anyone took a photograph of a low Earth orbit that showed the entire hemisphere, one side of the globe, was in '72 during Apollo 17. And he goes on to say that by 2002, we had finally had enough data to make a snapshot of the entire Earth. So we did. The hard part was creating a flat map of the Earth's surface with 4 months of satellite data. Vito Stockley, now at the Swiss Federal Office of Meteorology and Climatology, did much of this work. And then he said, then we wrapped the flat map around a ball. Okay? Now this is the image that was on the iPhone and was, again, textbooks, science journals, and that sort of thing then after. So this is really the first image that we have, like 43 years later. My part was integrating surface clouds and oceans to map people's expectations of how the Earth looks from space. It all became the famous Blue Marble. I found another article that was talked that Robert Simon was quoted in, and he says that he readily admits there are numerous fakeries in his image. The atmosphere is a Photoshop blur. Some of the clouds are collaged together using Photoshop's clone tool to cover gaps in the satellite's coverage. The black area around the Earth is not the void of space. The black area around the Earth is not the void of space. It is simply a background of black color that Simmons placed the Earth on top of. This is standard practice, Simmons says. Most actual photographs of the Earth, including the Apollo images, present the planet on a black background. I started thinking about what is the scientific value of these images if they openly admit that we're just pasting this stuff on black backgrounds. They're not real photographs. And then you guys have seen this, that the internet hive mind chewed this blue marble up quickly and started seeing all the clone clouds that were used. So when I began investigating these images, what I wanted to do was start comparing real images that I had taken and comparing those with the images that we were given by the space agencies. Okay, using free forensic tools that you can use online that break down these images. So this is a picture of my son. He's does a lot of drama and theater in school. I thought this was a great image to use in beginning to understand how these tools work. This is going to make sense in a minute. Because he is lit up with a spotlight. Okay, so he's got light hitting him, he's in a dark area. So we can start analyzing then these images that we get of the Earth from space and trying to use some of these forensic tools to see how they react to these different functions. So there was obviously 2 areas that you want to look at, in my opinion, and that is noise. Okay, so noise is when you're taking a picture with your camera, the dark areas, especially, the camera's trying to interpret the light there or turn that into signals, and it gets kind of scattered. So this is what a noise profile of a photograph would look like. It's very consistent in pattern, and it covers the entire image. Okay, this is using a tool called Forensically, which is free to use. You can find it on Google. You drop an image in, and you use the noise analysis, and you crank it up, and this is what you're going to see. The next area is ambient light. Ambient light is, there it is. Ambient light is the light that's bouncing off of that object, or that's the background light. Light coming in the window here would be considered ambient light. It's the light that exists already. So, in analyzing my own photos that I knew that weren't photoshopped, weren't altered in any way, they came straight off my camera, and starting to investigate how do these images work and react to these forensic tools. And then I'm going to obviously extrapolate from there and take these images that were given and see how they perform under the same conditions. So I took a picture that I took of the moon. This looked a lot like the moon last night. And then I did the noise analysis. Looks a lot like, the image that I took of my son. Ambient light. This is what I would expect when I see an image of the Earth from space. So this was a real photograph that was snapped and sent back down to Earth. I would expect to see a noise profile that would look like this. I would expect an ambient light profile. You can kind of see how the light is emanating from the object itself. Okay? So here's some of the early images that we got of Earth from space. The first one this is from 1988. It's a NASA asteroid rendezvous craft. There's the noise analysis. Do you see anything fishy there? No noise. It's only over those objects. There's nothing else. The entire area of space is void of any noise. Well, NASA even admits they paste the stuff on black backgrounds. What's the scientific value? These aren't photographs. Here's the ambient light. Data, the next one. This is from the European Space Agency, 2003. 8 million kilometers heading to Mars. No noise. No ambient light. Here's a NASA orbiter heading to Mars in 2007. No noise. No ambient light. This is from a Chinese orbiter in 2014. Took a picture of the dark side of the moon for us. No noise. No ambient light. Now this one I just included because I remember when I was doing pictures of Earth from space, which is what my research was, this one came up. This one was fascinating to me. It's called the pale blue dot. And it was, we're told, taken from a distance of the Earth from 3.7 billion miles. Billion miles. I didn't even understand how far that was until I started looking into this stuff. 1,000 seconds is 17 minutes. 1 million seconds is 12 days. You know how many 1 billion seconds it would take to expire? 31.7 years. 1 trillion seconds is 37,000 years. Okay? And this picture was taken from 3.7 billion miles away. That's like 6 trillion miles or something like that. Or 6 trillion miles is 1 light year. So, finally, 43 years after this image that we got from Apollo 17, NASA launched the Deep Space Climate Observatory satellite with its EPIC camera, Earth polychromatic imaging camera, and they launched it, and it's, we're told, sitting 1 million miles away between the Earth and the Sun, in this perfect point of gravity, so where it can stay between the Earth and the Sun, and always pointed at the sunlit side of Earth, so that every image that we get is going to be the full Earth disk. And these are the first 2 images that it sent us. It was launched in February 2015, and on July 4th, 2015, it was big news. These are the first 2 images that we received. So, naturally, I had to start doing this analysis, forensic analysis. Look at the noise profile. ambient light. Again, these aren't reacting like real photographs. So then, 2 days later, July 6, 2015, this is what the Earth looks like from 1 million miles away. And the Internet Hive Mind chewed this up really quickly as well. And this area of the image from the EPIC camera from the Discover satellite, if you turn it upside down, does anybody read what it says there? That image is still, you can go onto the EPIC website right now, choose the date, July 6, 2015, and it's sitting there. All right, so then, 10 days later, they really started, once they got this thing, in position, they wanted us to think that this thing was going to be providing a lot of insight for us. Who remembers this? This is from the EPIC camera, 1 million miles away from the Earth. There was something like 19 or 20 images that we got that day, and they put them in this nice little cartoon for us because it's an animation. It's image after image, and they put it together, and this is what you see. You guys see the clouds moving? Yeah, me either. This was apparently shot over 4 hours. So if maybe the clouds don't move over 4 hours. This one is really, really interesting because I think we caught up with making a big, big mistake here. So there's 2 parts of this website that I was frequenting when I found that this was giving us images started giving us many, many images every day for a while. There's the date section of the website where you can pick the date and see what images came in. And they also have this gallery page. So what that July 16, 2015, they called it the lunar transit, you can find all of those images on this section too. So the website is these 2 different sections, which are supposed to be obviously the same images, but they just put them into that animation for you. So I took those, these was going to be really interesting because now we have 2 objects, and this is recent, it's 2015, so let's see if these are really real photographs. That's what I was looking at. So I took the first 7 images, and I started messing around with the levels to see what happened. This blew me away. Obviously, no noise, no ambient light, from that first one. But look what happened when I had the brightness all the way up. You guys know that we have 2 moons. If you have a really high, turn your brightness up on your screen, in the original you can actually see that other moon. It's the same shape, the same size, and it's traversing at the same speed as well. I was just left to deduce that it was simply a glitch, in the rendering software, that layer. It duplicated the image. All right, so this then is the next lunar transit, July 5th, 2016. So about a year later, we got another lunar transit image animation. They fixed the glitch. It didn't happen again. I took 2 random images from the event, and you increase the brightness. They took the second moon out, but they forgot to remove the box around the Earth. You can go there right now today. You can go to this date, July 5th, 2016, download it onto your computer, put it into any photo editing software, and increase the brightness, and you're going to find a box that they tilted and pasted onto a black background. Again, what's the scientific value of these images if they're going to be doing all of this manipulation? Why don't we just give us the photograph if it really is one? Now, that was from one section of the website, okay? This is when you download the images from the date section. But if you go over to the gallery part of the website, from the same event, the same date, and you download the same images, but from a different section on the website, and you do the same analysis, they've removed the box. It's just inconsistencies. Just, thank you. Just things don't reconcile. That's what I was finding. And then if you drop these into forensically to do the noise analysis, you have noise around all of the objects, okay? So they're getting better. But again, you can see clearly this is a box pasted onto a black background and tilted. But if you use the gallery section image, you do the same analysis. Again, no noise and no ambient light. Everything will show up. Then the next event, March 9, 2016. This was a solar eclipse. You go to the date section and download some of the images, and no noise and no ambient light. That's what we would expect, right? I mean, this is very consistent. You go to the gallery section and download the same exact images from the same exact date. And I got a box around it, a tilted box. Where's the consistency here? The next set of, where my path kind of left there was going to the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was launched before the Discover satellite. It was launched to the moon, I believe it was in 2009. Here it is. It was supposed to be a 2 to 3 year mission, but it's 10 years ago it was launched, and it's still giving us images now. Really the first image that NASA played up and made a big deal of was from, was a callback to December 24th, 1968 from that live Christmas Eve broadcast. They said, hey, we now have another Earthrise image. And they gave us this one, Earthrise Reimagined. Big callback to the live Christmas Eve broadcast. Now we've got one, this is from October of 2015. And when you go to the website here on the NASA domain, it talks all about it. And there's 3 images that you can download. That these are the pictures from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And they give you this gallery of images. This is the first of the 3. And it says that we've got the left camera and the right camera, and then we've combined them together to give you the final image. Isn't that nice? Well, the first thing I did, obviously, was download it and drop it into, photo editing software or forensically, and this is what happened. You think these are real photographs? They don't react like a real photograph would. The second image, same thing. No surprise there. Then it gets really fun. The last one they give you is this really high, it's a TIFF file, and so it's many, many megabytes. It's really high quality. You can zoom in and see all this detail. It was amazing. When I did the same analysis, this just looks like sloppy work now, okay? They were attempting to remove the box. I don't know, maybe lunchtime came up and the person who was doing it was like, I'll finish this later, or whatever. But they tried to remove the box, and they got most of the way done, but they didn't. This is like a healing tool in Photoshop or something like that. Anybody that's familiar with that program. I thought that was very, very interesting. And then this is the one that really, really made me scratch my head. So on this, again, you've got these 3 images. You download, this was the second one, and then the next one was this high definition one. Do you notice any differences between the 2? They photoshopped out the mountain. What's the scientific value of these images if they're going to be making all these changes? What's going on here? All right, let's go to some other space agencies, because NASA's not the only one that's messing around. Roscosmos. Roscosmos supposedly has a satellite called the Electro-L that is 22,000 miles above the Earth and is hovering over that side of the planet and is in geosynchronous orbit, so that it is always in the same spot. And so it gives us images many every day at these time intervals. And go back too many times. In the FTP folder, which you'll see here when I play a video clip from another section of one of my videos, at the same time every day, when you image look at the image from, I think it's 2030, so 10:30 p.m., you have this line going right down the middle of all of the images. When you increase the brightness and use these forensic tools, these are software glitches. Okay, that's what's going on here. These are software glitches. These are supposedly pictures from space. They're so heavily manipulated. Okay, I want to play a short clip here from some of the other things that I found. And the reason is that when I went to build this presentation, I went back to find the electro L images that I had used in previous videos, and they've been removed. From 2016, 2017, those are removed from the website. You can only go back to 2018. So these anomalies that I show here in the video, you can't even find them online anymore.
We're going to navigate through the links to the Electro L2, then 2017, and then the month of June, and go to June 20th. We're going to look at the time of 2030 and pull up the quote-unquote original JPEG, and what you'll see here is a very weird anomaly, this fluorescent green line. You can also hit the back button and go to 2000 hours, so 30 minutes before, and see an even larger green anomaly, a green line that looks like multiple lines here. And then the subsequent time folders, you'll sometimes see these weird green smudges all over the disk at various places. This happens, or appears to happen on other days as well, but always when the light is starting to go away or behind the disk as Roscosmos is presenting these images from the Electro-L. And all of these anomalies, from the green line, the green smudges, and the weird dividing line we showed in part 1, all happen with the night images only. If we put the photo in Photoscape, and we use the backlighting feature, we can see the weird dividing line again, which is very strange. You may argue that the weird green line is some sort of glitch when the different channels of the camera are combined, but then you'll have to reconcile why it doesn't happen with every shot, and never during the quote-unquote daytime images, and only when we're seeing the dark side of the disk. The other point we want to make here is that, as you've seen, every single time folder contains 10 files, and then the RGB is the combined one. The other images, JPEG 1, 2, JPEG 3, etc., all have some colors, and some are black and white, and some have clouds. So, if these are all the different channels, how come when they combine all the images, the clouds disappear? Apparently, we can see the clouds all over the dark side of the disk. Each folder contains a few pictures of clouds all over. But when all of the data is combined into one image, the clouds on the dark side disappear? Very strange. And of course, if you put all of these images into Forensically, you'll see no noise, no ambient light, meaning they are just pasted onto a fake background, a black background meant to be the infinite vacuum of space. Extremely weird stuff going on with these images from the Electro L2.
Now we're going to switch over to everybody's favorite, the Japanese Space Agency. In the first clip I'm going to play here, and I want you to honestly watch this and tell me if you think this is real. This looks like a video game I was playing as a youngster. People believe us. You put it out there, and there's, wow, look at that Earth rise. It just looks like a computer animation to me. But maybe I'm trying to see something that's not there. That's what everybody has to decide for themselves. The Himawari, that's the Japanese. You've probably heard the Himawari. Again, 22,000 miles above the Earth, hovered right over Japan. Taking images. I think we get those every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes. Now, the Japanese Space Agency is getting good, okay? They give us, well, first of all, Himawari means sunflower. That's how it translates And so if that's not evidence, kind of the heliocentric sun-worshipping model right there, that one that just kind of struck me as very interesting. But check this out. This is what we get from the Himawari. These are all of the images that they give us every 10 or 15 minutes put into an animation. You guys see the clouds moving? Yeah, they're getting good. They're getting a lot better. This is probably, when it comes to pictures of the Earth from space, this is probably what's brought up the most to me. They say, what about the Himawari? Okay, that one's got to be real. Look, the clouds are moving. That look pretty real? And to me, I was like, I got to look more into this because they're getting good. There's kind of two ways you can investigate the Himawari. This is from the Japanese Space Agency website, but all of the images they give you have these, obviously they've been manipulated because they're putting in the boundaries of countries and things like that, so you can kind of orient yourself. But there's a backdoor. The NOAA website receives all of the images, the Himawari daily, and you can see the timestamps there. So these are the images that I pulled from August 18th. In the States, we put the 21st, so that's why the dates look a little weird. August 18th this year, and you can download all of these every 10 minutes, and it takes forever for the website to load because of the fact that they just have one folder and all these images are just coming in. So I just scroll down to the bottom to find the most recent image at the time that I pulled this together. But this is what I found that really got me going, okay, I'm starting to see how they're doing this thing. In that same folder, they have a text file, a description, site description.txt. And when you read through that, they admit right here, the underlying colored land image is from the NASA Blue Marble Next Generation. You know which one that is? If that doesn't kind of debunk the whole Himawari right there, I don't know what will, because they basically are admitting that the land underneath all of the clouds are from the Blue Marble data set that they put together in 2002. Okay, so how they do in the clouds? Here's the clip. This is the Blue Marble data set. You go and you can actually go to the Blue Marble dataset website page and download all of the images from there. This is what they look like. And even the Blue Marble, that wasn't like images that we were getting of the Earth. It was data that the satellite supposedly was sending us, and then Rob Simon and his team interpret that and put it into pictures for you. Okay, so these look like real pictures from a satellite. Or cartoons. All right, so this is my theory on how they are simulating, in my opinion, simulating the clouds.
But to move on, and then to just briefly show you how they generate a picture every 10 minutes with what appears to be accurate in current weather. This is basically what they do. Now, don't take my word for it, as I always say. Go check it out for yourself. Number one, they have already created and stored transparent images of the weather over the oceans using climate simulation software, which they openly admit right here that they've done climate simulations up to the year 2095. But it's actually the year 2100 on this FTP server folder, and here's one of the images. And following some of the other images that you can find where the land masses are transparent, and they use all this simulation software to come up with the weather over the oceans. You know, since our weather data comes from our ground-based Doppler radar, and it's impossible to use ground-based systems to cover the entire vast oceans, so that's where the weather over the oceans comes from, their software simulations. Number two, now for the weather over the land, the NOAA has supercomputers that take data coming in from all over the world, Doppler radar feeds, and crunch it all together and combine it with the weather simulation data over the oceans, so they come up with a complete composite weather quote-unquote map, which is then wrapped around a ball in their 3D modeling software programs, just like we've shown countless times in our previous episodes with the Earth and the planets, etc. So, Then what we get are composite images like this that are created in the 3D modeling software. The current Doppler weather data over land and the simulated weather over the oceans, and it looks like this. So this particular image is on the FTP server and is date and time stamped with October 11th, 2017 at 11:05 a.m. I just chose one randomly. Notice the image shows you the weather for the whole ball and not just part of the ball that is lit by the sun at this particular time. No Terminator line or anything like that, right? Okay, now here's the kicker. Go to the other file folder, which is the images that we get to see and are told are real pictures from space. But what they've simply done is taken the weather map picture of the whole ball they created and they superimpose it over the blue marble data set, just like they said they did. So what you can see here is the final version of what we're spoon-fed and told is a picture taken by the Himawari from space, like, 10 minutes ago. This is the image from the same date and time, October 11th, 2017 at 11:05 a.m. And you can see that the weather is exactly the same. Watch it closely. There's your weather map comprised of simulated and Doppler radar being used to complete a composite image. They do this with the Discover satellite too, the Epic camera from 1,000,000 miles away, they tell us. Ridiculous. Okay. Now, also notice the final image has a Terminator line added in to try and make it look like a real picture from space, which drives a nail in the coffin of the Himawari because the weather data shows it over the whole ball completely. But they have to add a Terminator line to show the Earth only partially lit by the sun based on the time of day that the photo is allegedly taken. So if this is a real picture, how did they know where to put the clouds and weather on the part of the globe with no sunlight? It's completely dark there. It's all right here, guys. They are faking space. Hey, we all fell for it for a long time with their Doppler radar and weather simulation software building a current weather picture and wrapping it around a ball in 3D software and pasting it onto a black background like they do with all the others, adding a Terminator line and calling it a real picture from space.
And then the final kicker, I guess, on the Himawari was taking any of the images that we get every 10 or 15 minutes and dropping them into the forensic software to see how they react, see if they react like a real photograph or something that I had taken with my own camera. And there is the noise, and if we could turn up the brightness on the screen, if we could, what you'll see around these, looks a lot better from the ambient light, you have these jagged edges all the way around. So these things are obviously CGI, computer graphic images that have been pasted onto a black background. And again, what's the scientific value of these images if we find all of this manipulation? That's the question that kind of keeps coming up in my mind. Now we're going to move on to something a lot more recent. The Indian space program, just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, attempted to land on the moon. And they sent us some images of the Earth from space. This is from their website. You can see that there were 5 images there of the Earth. So we went in and downloaded those and checked the noise profile. And looked for ambient light, placed it onto a black background. I thought it's also interesting when you look at a lot of these, you try to look at the metadata. So if you take your picture with your camera and you drop it into the software here and you look at metadata, it'll tell you the time, date stamp, the camera that was used, the settings, and things like that. When you go and look at these images from all these space agencies and you look for the metadata, it's all been removed. So there's no evidence, there's no validation, there's nothing. You can't tell what time it was taken, and that sort of thing. And the same thing with the Indian Space Agency here. They removed all of the metadata so that you could perhaps even look at what time and date, when it was taken and what kind of camera it took, or what kind of camera signature, and things like that. Now, what about the other planets in our solar system? And I kind of had to go there, looking into NASA and that sort of thing, but I get that a lot. Well, maybe those images are real. You recognize that planet? Anyone? Mars. About those two? Yep, Neptune and Mercury. That's Venus. And Pluto. Yep. Those look pretty cool, huh? I made those. And the reason I was able to make those is because if you go, again, on the NASA FTP server, they have a folder for every one of the planets. And when I started digging in there, I found flat maps of all planets. So all you got to do is take, what's this? This is Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune and Uranus, and Pluto. Pluto, what a hack job this thing was. Like they got halfway done, and same guy that's probably trying to remove the box around the Earth, it kind of gets half done or whatever, and it's like, I'm going to head to lunch, and then it doesn't come back. That's the flat map of Pluto. You just simply can take it into Photoshop and wrap it around a sphere and a Terminator line. That's all I had to do to basically make another planet, just like we're shown. Those are the same. You do a search for Mars or whatever, you're going to find those maps, and they're going to be on mainstream media websites saying, "Here's a picture of Mars from NASA." Okay. Speaking of Pluto, this was a fun one. Some people haven't seen this. Pluto was discovered, we're told, February 18th, 1930. 1930 is also the year that Pluto, the dog, made its first appearance with Disney. And many people have seen this, but in case you haven't, what are the chances that Pluto was on Pluto? In fact, the more I dug into Pluto, and looking at some of the images that we were getting from NASA, it kind of has an inferiority or a complex, it's a planet, it's not a planet, it kind of goes back and forth or whatever. There was big news released from NASA July 17, 2015. NASA's New Horizons spacecraft discovered frozen plains in the heart of Pluto's heart. And if you read the article, again, July 17, 2015 is when it was released. And it says that the image was taken July 14th, so 3 days later, they get the picture, they write up the story, the latest data from the New Horizons spacecraft. Well, if you take the image there that they gave you and put it into photo forensics, the photo was created originally in 2012. I think they're just making it up as they go. This image was created in 2012, but it was the latest data that we had from the New Horizons spacecraft in 2015. Stuff like that. Stuff just doesn't add up. So, the Earth from space. What do you guys think? Do we have real photographs? I would submit that it's computer graphics. And this was really personal for me because of the simple fact that it was the stumbling block that I had to overcome when it comes to this subject. And this is where I spent my time, analyzing these images. I had help along the way. I want to give credit to a gentleman by the name of Archer Sage, who did a lot of this research. We spent a lot of time on the phone going through folder after folder and analyzing images and starting to find these anomalies. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit to the second section of my video series. Perfect, thank you. And I'm going to play a quick clip here to kind of get you in the mood for this next. Who remembers that day? Anybody here? Was it a big deal? It was huge. I mean, all the headlines, right? The the celebrations. I unfortunately don't remember because I wasn't alive yet, but this was a big deal. But these guys didn't get the memo. And I think if you, and I'm sure most of you have watched the press conference by now, that press conference, if that doesn't just strike you as odd, their behavior, I don't know what will. Okay? Well, let's get into the moon research, the image analysis, and things like that, another friend of mine, Scott Henderson, and I have been putting together over the last year. These are some of the highlights. For somebody that maybe is still thinking the moon landings were legit, I think there's some really damaging evidence here that can be shared with them to kind of show that it's unlikely that the images that we got were really shot on the moon. The first thing I want to go over, though, is I want to slap the hands of many people in the community that are propagating some fake news. Okay? Have you guys seen this image and trying to say, hey, look, the boots don't even match up, right? This is Neil Armstrong's complete kit, they say. This is everything that he was wearing when he stepped foot on the moon. And they're saying, look at the footprint and look at the boots, what he was wearing. That doesn't match up. Has anybody seen this? Okay? Well, it's fake news. And I hope people stop spreading this because they told us that they wore these boots that went over those boots that we are shown. They're right there in the picture, and that's where the footprint comes from. Okay? So when I see this thing being spread online, I try and chime in and say, stop spreading that because that's not a good piece of evidence. Okay? So I'm starting to put that on my presentations to try and get the word out. When I start seeing that public service announcement. This thing really kicked into high gear when the Project Apollo archive was put on a photo sharing site called Flickr. For the first time, we had thousands of high-res images from the Apollo program that the astronauts took themselves. Now, before they were, very low quality, very grainy, things like that. But in 2015, NASA put all of these images on Flickr, and you can also find them on the Apollo journal sites. So this was a kid in a candy store, really getting to look at some of these images because now we had some real high quality, high resolution, and we could magnify things and really study some of the detail. And that's revealed some very, very interesting things. The first thing, though, before we get into the actual images, is doing a little bit of date reconciliation. I think this is pretty damaging evidence. At the beginning of every one of the video sequences that we got from the missions themselves, okay, these are cameras that were put on the lunar lander themselves and the rover, and that were taking video, taking images. At the beginning, and you can find all these on YouTube, and you can find them all on the NASA website, the Apollo Journal site. At the beginning of every mission, they have a color plate. The color plate is used to obviously adjust the colors on your monitor, whatever you're using, to make sure that you have them dialed in correctly. At the beginning of every one of these video series from each of the missions, they have a color plate and they put a date on it. This is from Apollo 11, and the date is July 11, 1969. Does that cause any problems for anybody? The date. Apollo 11 wasn't launched until the 16th of July. They didn't walk on the moon until the 20th of July. But the videos and the pictures that we got from the astronauts themselves were from the 11th of July. You go check out the training calendar for the Apollo astronauts from the NASA press kits that were given months in advance. This is what their astronauts are going to be doing every day leading up to the launch. I was curious, what were they doing on the 11th of July when all these videos and pictures supposedly were captured? They were doing a translunar injection simulation. Okay, let's go to Apollo 12. I want to H. Jones is the inspector, okay? Remember that name, it's going to come up a little bit later. This is very interesting. Apollo 12, November 11, 1969, are the videos and pictures. What was the launch date? 14th of November. When did they walk on the moon? The 19th. They weren't even on the moon until 8 days after these. And these are sitting here on YouTube. These are on the Apollo Journal site. You know, you click play. You see the color plate. It kind of then fizzles out, and they start playing all the video. So what were the astronauts doing on the 11th of November? Lunar module simulation and command module simulation. And H. Jones. This guy's going to get around. Apollo 14, January 25th, 1971 was when the video and the pictures. They launched on the 31st of January and didn't walk on the moon until the 5th of February. Same problems. What were they doing on the 25th of January? According to the training calendar, months in advance. I'm not sure what all those acronyms mean, but again, I do know that CMS and LMS are the command module and the lunar module simulations. There's kind of a pattern that's going on here, right? And here's what I think is going on is that before you go on stage, you do a dress rehearsal, right? Before these guys were going to be launching, they went through all the motions. They climbed in and out of the lunar module. They climbed in, you know, they did everything that they were going to plan to be doing on the moon, and they took the pictures and they did everything as they were supposed to. And then they launched, and then what NASA gave us was all the simulation pictures and video. Apollo 15, July 17th. They didn't launch until the 26th of July, and they weren't on the moon, allegedly, until the 30th of July. What were they doing on the 17th? Again, simulations. The launch date is, you know, it's over a week later when they were going to launch. Apollo 16 is a little tough to read, the date. But if you look at when they launched and when they landed on the moon, I don't think it's the 20th of April. Looks like the 7th of April or something like that to me. What were they doing on the 7th of April? Again, some more simulations. They launched again a little more than a week later. And then Apollo 17, November 28th, 1972. They didn't walk on the moon until the 11th of December. What were they doing on the 28th? EVA, final equipment, orbital geology, lunar module, the command module, transfer. They didn't launch until, again, the 7th of December. And there's Mr. Jones, or Miss Jones. You guys recognize these images. These are called cuff checklists. So the astronauts wore little flip books on their cuffs for the missions. They would flip through, telling them what they were supposed to do. Make sure they hit all the bullet points. This is a scientific mission, we've got to do all these things. These things are prepared, you know, months in advance as they're planning out the missions. So what's Jones doing on the moon? Why does he need to be in the cuff checklist? I think it's so they didn't accidentally get him on film or take a picture of it. That's where he's going to be standing. I just thought it was interesting that in the cuff checklist that they were using on the moon, it was the same name as the person in the videos, inspector for the videos and the images. You dive into some of these cuff checklists and they're quite amusing. How is NASA going to know in advance that here's the disturbed area, so make sure to avoid it? We're going to break open a rock, and here is what is going to be the mineral components of that rock. Pretty good. Make sure that you have the right settings, and here's the settings for the camera. Here's where the sun is going to be when you do this. Pretty precise. And then always, this goes without saying, Neil, Buzz, and all the other astronauts, make sure that when you are making or following this checklist, that you are having enthusiastic observations. These guys are on stage. These guys got to be following the script as they shoot this thing. And they launch and land on the moon, and we get to see all the pictures and video. Isn't that convenient? We can really kind of break these down and getting into some of the specifics, and I'll show you just some highlights. There appears to be an accident that happened with Apollo 15. If you look closely, you can see the damage here from the exhaust bell housing. It's crushed. And the rover broke off from its mounts. 15, 16, and 17 were the missions with the rover. Okay, and there's pieces of the lunar lander that are all around. Now this is the only mission, 15 is the only mission where we did not get to see the flag salute. And the first thing that all the other missions did, the astronauts would climb out of the spacecraft, plant the flag, salute it, it's a very patriotic moment, and that sort of thing. But 15, they didn't do that. They went on 2 EVAs, we're told, and then they came back and did the flag. I think they had to clean up the mess. You can see some of the pieces here. And if you really examine these photos that we were given, you can see that the damage from the struts, from the landing struts. And it looks like some pieces had to be replaced. Personal life support systems, PLSSs. We're told that each astronaut only had one. Okay, there was no redundancy. If you damaged your pack, you were going to be in big trouble. This is what they wore on their back. There's a life support system in their suit. This cooled them, this kept them warm, and obviously provided oxygen for them. Well, when we examined these pictures, we found that there were 2 additional ones sitting here. This is from the accident. You see these 2 additional personal life support systems. Well, that guy's got to be wearing one, and the person taking the picture's got to be taking one. So there's all this extra equipment lying around, and we're told that they each only had one. These are the different rovers from each of the missions. This is 15, 16, and 17. And as you really dive in here and you start looking at these images, you'll see that the rover from each of those missions had an oil leak on the rear left tire. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. What the conclusion that we're coming to as we examine these things is that the same equipment was used mission after mission. Okay? Now we're told that they didn't bring the rover back. They left it up there. Each mission they brought a new one along. But it appears 15, which is the first one, that it was damaged when maybe it was simulated and it was dropped. We see the damage to the, first of all, you go back to the transcripts and you look, the astronauts, everything they said, everything that mission control said was written out. We had transcripts of everything. There's no mention of any damage. If they had landed roughly and the rover had broken off, they probably would have talked about it, okay? If they had all these problems that were going on. There was no mention of any of this stuff. We're finding that it looks like that the rover was damaged when it broke off of its mounts during the simulated landing. And it never was the same. It never worked as it was designed. It had a lot of problems. It kept breaking down. All from the same mission. There's basically 3 different fenders. Okay? There's, again, no mention of any changing of equipment. These guys didn't bring extra fenders along. Okay? This is all from the same mission. You have 3 different tire tracks from the same mission. They changing tires? Okay, let's say they did. What didn't they talk about? Hey, Houston, we're going to have to change a tire here. We blew it out. Of course, these things weren't full of air anyway. But the point is, why is there 3 different tire tracks in the same? You kept having problems with these things. This is from Apollo 17, I believe. It's the jump salute. The astronaut is actually off the ground here. He jumped up for the picture. You zoom in on the rover in the background here. This fender is double ribbed. From all 3 missions, that's the only picture of the rover with the double ribbed fender. All the other pictures of the rover from that same mission have the single rib. Inconsistencies, lack of reconciliation. Back to this video here from Apollo 16. So I think the one Rob you played was up from Apollo 11. This is from 16. Did you notice anything going on here? This one really got me want to look deeper into this. Watch it in slow motion, what happens to the side of the spacecraft. It blew a side out when it took off. Look at these things just kind of flapping in the wind. You see the wire, the reflection off some sort of wire strap there too? Oh, that was interesting. There was some damage that was done here. There's no mention in the transcripts of an explosion or anything like that. Something like that potentially would be devastating to the mission. Here it is, slow motion and close up. Does that look space-worthy to you? These guys aren't talking about damage to the spacecraft. So this was an image that we got from before the mission. This is what it looks like in the clean room. Everything is put together in a clean room, so there's no contamination, no bacteria, whatever. This is what was behind those panels. Does that look like anything important? The electrical components and things like that, right? That side of the spacecraft blew out. Now, for evidence that they're just recycling this equipment for each of the simulations, for each of the missions, this is Apollo 16 this is on the moon before the liftoff and before the explosion. And if you find an image in Apollo 17, approximately the same angle, this is what you find. It looks like they just replaced those four. They're a little bit of a different color. They just repaired those four panels and they shot 17. I don't think they had to make a new lunar lander for each mission. I just think they used the same one. But we're told it was left on the moon, at least part of it. And then some of the other highlights would be evidence of moisture on the moon. Okay? We're told that the surface of the moon is 10 times 11 to the negative 4. Okay? Moisture cannot exist. What happens even at 60 miles? Okay? You get the pressure so low that the water boils. Okay? Moisture cannot exist at that low of an air pressure. But we see mold and mildew growing on things. Okay? Here's evidence of water. Standing water. And you can see here this piece of scientific equipment. Looks like they ripped off the top of a school desk. You can see where the glue is. This is like a hastily made prop, is what it seems like to me. This looks like water to me. Look how reflective that surface is compared to the others. And look at how this is peeling up from the sides. I think this is the same equipment used over and over and over. And we talk about that this was, led to speculate that the moon landings were shot on a stage, over in a studio. I think this stuff was shot outside. I think we see evidence of aging and moisture and damage outside of the equipment, mission after mission after mission. This stuff is, each mission gets a little bit worse for wear. There's moisture here. Looks like the panel is drying. This was an image that we were given. This was somewhere like halfway between the Earth and the moon. It's like why would they have something like a rain guard for the outside of the spacecraft that's been damaged? It looks like repaired with some tape. So it's taken halfway to the moon. Look at the moisture between the two panes of glass. The seal broke. We're speculating that during a pressure test, they blew a seal and moisture has got between the two panes. It's supposed to be negative 250 degrees outside. How is the moisture, how does that happen? And then there's the famous Apollo 17 image of the astronaut, the flag, and the Earth in the background. And I think this one has been staring us in the face for a very, very, very long time. Because if you zoom in on the flag, I think it's wet and been drying from the edges in. Now, you might come to a different conclusion. That flag looks wet to me. And as it's dry, I think it's left outside, and I think moisture, whether it's rain or dew or whatever, the mist of the morning, and as throughout the day, you can see it's been drying. And there's a really close-up image of it.
First, many have doubted for 50 years now how those.
Let me set this up first real quick. I think this is the last clip. Mark Sargent's going to get a kick out of this one. It's all about the spacesuit. Okay, I think this is really the key. Okay, this is from a recent video that I did about 3 or 4 months ago, and it really analyzes the astronaut spacesuit. I think it's only about 5 minutes.
First, many have doubted for 50 years now how those white, fluffy, but bulky-looking spacesuits we are also familiar with could withstand such a low-pressure environment and not become immediately rigid and render the astronauts completely immobile. But we must be careful when touting that whole idea as proof that the spacesuits wouldn't work, as advertised, because NASA claims to have figured that out long before astronauts allegedly stepped foot on the moon. You see, according to NASA, the astronauts actually donned two spacesuits, a pressurized inner suit, as seen here, which was beneath the unpressurized outer white one. So don't be quick to claim the outer white suit would balloon up as the air pressure was reduced, because, as the story goes, that part of the spacesuit wasn't even pressurized. We are told this inner pressurized spacesuit, which would still, even to this day, have to be considered a modern marvel of technology, was airtight, mostly made of neoprene, and was contained within a layer of embedded mesh-like material to keep it from expanding. Kind of like a balloon inside a bag of netting, only allowing the balloon to expand so far. Further, we're told the fingers, shoulders, knees, and elbows of this inner pressurized suit had accordion-like joints that allowed flexing without ballooning. Truly a technological masterpiece. The outer layer, the white unpressurized suit, was made of fireproof, abrasion-resistant material, we are told, which was designed to provide thermal insulation and protection against micrometeors, but only works in a vacuum. So, case closed, right? Not so fast. When you start to closely examine the photographs and employ some basic common sense, as usual, NASA's story just doesn't add up. And here's why. If the white outer suit wasn't pressurized and was designed only to serve as a thermal outer layer, then why do the gloves and helmet attach directly to this unpressurized suit? This is Neil Armstrong's suit as displayed by NASA as his complete kit. The suit flown in Apollo 11 for the claimed moon landings. It has been on display for many years and has been restored and cleaned in an attempt to keep it from decay and as a permanent record of the claimed event. The International Latex Corporation was contracted to make the suits. NASA's updated files claim that it has 21 layers of protection. Interesting that none are listed as a protection against radiation, however, but I digress. Here's another attempt to show the updated movements of the astronauts in their suits. The image on the left is from the Apollo 11 press kit. On the right is an image of the alleged pressurized suit. However, it's not pressurized in this photo, and is certainly not in a vacuum chamber. It's clear to see that the suit in the previous frame is not incorporated into this suit. This is a costume for simulation only and does not have the seals required to pressurize. On the top left, the ring is not sealed to the suit and the zipper does not go all the way up. And the zipper would not seal and hold any air pressure. The seals and connections of the helmet and gloves do not compress and have a door latch tongue design for a quick attachment. The suit is done up using zippers, poppers or snaps, and Velcro. This would not seal. The zipper does not go all the way up, would not even hold a small amount of pressure. Again, these suits were designed to put on and off easily for simulation purposes in media events only. There is not a pressure suit inside. Even if the inner pressurized suit NASA claims the astronauts wore under the outer unpressurized suits, even if it was incorporated into or between the white abrasion layers, it still wouldn't seal because of the snaps and zipper connections. The connection rings on the glove and the suit are clearly not connected. The band on the suit is visible and the ring is just below it. The gap between the rings are about 3 inches apart. The ring on the glove is behind the watch. And the rings themselves are quick connect and cannot seal in the vacuum of space or even underwater. The suit is a stage costume used for practice and simulations. The images here are from Buzz descending the ladder from the Apollo simulation photos, numbered here. It is very clear the gloves are not attached and, of course, cannot be in a vacuum. It is clear to see here that the connections are attached to this garment, and not to the claimed pressurized suit, as there isn't one underneath or incorporated in. The connections shown here are not sealed properly to withstand the vacuum of space. On the left is a food port attached to the bubble helmet, but as you can see, the seal cannot be compressed, as it as what would be required, and the inside air pressure would push the cover out and away from the seal. It cannot be used in a vacuum, so the only reason it must be there is to give the astronauts a drink using a straw during practice or simulations. On the above left are 4 photos of high vacuum seals, metal, and one-time use materials. These are needed to seal in a high and ultra-high vacuum areas, of which the moon, we are told, was a ultra-high vacuum area at 1 × 10⁻11 torr. On the right are the helmet seals of the Apollo missions. The latch fits in the groove for easy installation. This connection does not have the capability to compress the seal and would not function even in a low vacuum. The gloves have a similar type for an easy connection. The surfaces must be clean and free of foreign materials for the seal to be effective. The Apollo astronauts using the same suits covered in dirt for 3 EVAs, it would be impossible for the suits to work and reseal each time. The same is true for the hatch for the LEM, as they had to crawl through, dragging dust and dirt with them. The door seals would not function. The LEM could not be repressurized after re-entry. And the fact remains. The helmet and gloves clearly were attached to the outer white, non-pressurized suit. Even if the connections to the helmet and gloves were able to withstand an ultra-high vacuum environment, the outer white suit would have to be pressurized, which is in direct conflict with NASA's claims. Someone is lying.
Two suits. So we need to stop claiming that the white outer layer would become rigid immediately in the vacuum of space. There was supposed to be a layer underneath that was pressurized, except all the connections are only on the unpressurized part. I think that's a real continuity error when it comes to the spacesuit. I'll go through the rest of these slides quickly because I'm almost out of time. Image on the left looks like a rock in the background. You zoom in. I think that's a beer can. It's definitely not a rock. I'm not sure what it is. It looks a lot like the can there, but it looks metallic. It looks like it's got some color and it looks shiny. I don't think that's a naturally occurring object on the moon. I just thought this was interesting. New York Times, December 30th, 1969. Neil Armstrong predicts that we will be on Mars by 1983. So with everything you've seen here, my intent really was to, if there's anybody here that maybe was still trusting NASA at some level, showing that there's a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of doublespeak talking to both sides of their mouth. Hopefully some cracks in the foundation of somebody's trust in NASA at least has been, at least you've been given enough evidence here to maybe look into this thing. And that's the whole idea of my series, was just to get people to question whether the stuff that they were giving us is real or not, whether it's images from space, whether it's moon landings, etc. And it's very personal for me because the way I look at it is, in the States, I'm giving my tax dollars every week, every month, every year to this organization. And I think there's zero scientific value that we're getting. And I think they're just faking space. I think they're literally faking space, and they're using my money to lie to my kids and your kids, and lie to my parents and your parents. And I'm sick of it. And that was the motivation for this series. And I hope you start to share some of those feelings as well. So when it comes to the shape of the Earth, NASA says, don't worry, we checked. Well, we checked you, NASA, and you failed miserably. Real quickly, if you'd like to see the video series, it's free on my website, fakingspace.net, redirects right to my main page, where you can see there's over 30 videos where I dissect this thing at a much greater level. These are just some highlights, little snippets to whet your appetite. Please check it out. If you have time, please feel free to share it. Again, it's free. Don't Life with Paul and Mitch is my podcast, released every week. Not this month, I'm traveling a lot. DomeLifePodcast.com. Also available on most major platforms. Don't forget to miss Paul and Plain Live with me and the lovely, talented, and warrior for truth, my co-host, Roxanne and Globalist and I, every week at truthfrequencyradio.com. You can also find all of our archives at tfrlive.com/Paul and Plain. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be up here. Thank you again, Robin, for inviting me. I had a lot of fun, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.